My fiancée said, "I'm not sure you're the man I want to marry. I need to see what else is out there." I said, "I understand." I canceled the wedding, returned the ring, and moved out without another argument. When she came back a few weeks later saying, "I made a mistake," she found out I had already started a new life with her sister. Original post. I, 29M, had been with Sabrina, 27F, for 4 years. We lived in a restored loft in the Pearl District of Portland, Oregon, a place with exposed brick, impossibly high ceilings, and rent that made me wince every first of the month. But it was what she wanted. Sabrina worked as a graphic designer for a boutique firm that handled branding for local artisanal coffee shops and microbreweries. I was a logistics manager for a mid-sized regional freight company, coordinating routes from Seattle down to Northern California. We were different on paper, but it worked. Or so I thought. We got engaged on a rainy Tuesday evening, right there in the loft, after a dinner of takeout Thai food. It wasn't grandiose, but it felt genuine. We spent the next 8 months planning a wedding that grew increasingly elaborate. We were 6 weeks out from the big day. The venue, a converted historic barn in the Willamette Valley, was booked. The caterer, specializing in locally sourced farm-to-table cuisine, had been paid their final deposit. The invitations, which Sabrina had painstakingly designed and hand-letterpressed, were sent. Then came the conversation. It was a Sunday morning. I was brewing coffee, the smell of roasted beans filling the loft, when she walked into the kitchen. She looked pale, her eyes darting everywhere but at me. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I set the coffee pot down. "Okay, what's wrong?" She took a deep breath, clutching the edge of the granite counter. "I'm not sure you're the man I want to marry. I need to see what else is out there." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It felt like the floor had dropped out from beneath me. I waited for a punchline, for her to tell me she was stressed about the wedding, that this was just cold feet. But the look on her face was resolute. She meant it. "Okay," I said. It was the only word I could manage. "Okay." She looked surprised. "You're not going to fight for this. You just told me you need to see what else is out there." I replied, my voice remarkably steady despite the chaos in my head. "What am I supposed to fight for? You've made your choice." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. The pride I didn't know I possessed kicked in, forming a protective barrier around my shock. If she needed to look elsewhere, I wasn't going to be her safety net. That afternoon, I started making calls. The first was to the venue. They were sympathetic but firm on the non-refundable deposit. I told them to keep it and cancel the reservation. The second was to the caterer. Same story. The third was to my parents, who were stunned into silence before my mother started crying. The hardest part was the ring. She had left it on the kitchen counter when she went out for a walk to clear her head. It was a custom piece, an oval-cut sapphire flanked by 2 small diamonds, set in platinum. I took it back to the jeweler in the Pearl. They gave me 60% of its value, which felt like a steal given the circumstances. Over the next 3 days, while Sabrina stayed with a friend, I packed my life into boxes. I arranged for a moving truck and signed a lease on a small, utilitarian apartment in St. John's, a neighborhood far removed from the artisanal coffee shops and exposed brick of our old life. When Sabrina returned on Wednesday to pack some of her own things, she found the loft half empty. "You're actually leaving?" she asked, standing amidst the cardboard boxes. "Yes," I said, taping up a box of books. "The wedding is canceled. The vendors are notified. I've spoken to my family. You should probably speak to yours." She looked stricken. I didn't mean it like this. I just needed some space." "You said you needed to see what else is out there," I corrected her. "Now you have all the space you need. The lease here is in my name, but I've paid the rent through the end of the month. You have until then to figure out your next steps." I left her standing there, grabbed the last box, and walked out. It was cold, clinical, and completely devoid of the dramatic screaming match she likely expected. Update 1. It's been a month since the day she dropped the bomb. Adjusting to the new apartment in St. John's has been strange. It's quiet here, less pretentious. The local bar has sticky floors and cheap beer, and I prefer it to the craft cocktail lounges Sabrina favored. My work has been my anchor. Managing logistics requires focus, and right now, I have plenty of that to spare. I throw myself into spreadsheets and route optimizations, drowning out the persistent ache of a future that evaporated. The fallout from the canceled wedding has been predictably messy. Sabrina's family was furious, mostly at me. until the truth trickled out. Her mother, a formidable woman named Eleanor, called me a week after I moved out. "Did you really just walk away?" she demanded. "She told me she wanted to see other people, Eleanor. What did you expect me to do?" There was a long pause on the line. "She's a fool," Eleanor finally said, her voice tight. "But you didn't have to be so ruthless about it." "I wasn't ruthless. I was efficient." Efficiency became my coping mechanism. I severed ties cleanly. I blocked Sabrina on all social media and instructed our mutual friends not to pass on messages. I didn't want to know if she had found what else was out there. Then, 2 weeks ago, I ran into Qley. Qley is Sabrina's older sister. She's 31, a physical therapist who works at a clinic in Beaverton. Qley and Sabrina were never particularly close. Qley was practical, grounded, and preferred hiking in the Columbia River Gorge to gallery openings in the Pearl. I always liked Qley. She was straightforward and had a dry, sarcastic wit that I appreciated. We bumped into each other at a hardware store of all places. I was buying drywall anchors. She was looking at paint swatches. "Hey," she said, looking surprised. "I heard you moved." "Yeah, St. John's." She nodded slowly. "Sabrina told me what happened." "Well, her version of it." "And what was her version?" "That you were cold and unfeeling and kicked her out without a second thought." Qley rolled her eyes. "I told her that if she tells a man she wants to look for better options, she shouldn't be surprised when he shows her the door." I couldn't help but laugh. It was the first time I'd genuinely laughed in weeks. "Do you want to get a coffee?" Qley asked. "Or a beer? You look like you could use a beer." We ended up at a dive bar down the street. We talked for hours. Not about Sabrina, mostly, but about our own lives. She told me about the clinic, about a recent trip she took to the Oregon coast. I told her about the logistics of moving freight across the Pacific Northwest. It was easy, uncomplicated. When we parted ways, she gave me her number. "If you ever need someone to vent to, or just want to grab a drink, let me know." I didn't call her right away. I felt a twinge of guilt, a sense that this was crossing some unspoken boundary. But the silence in my apartment was deafening, and Qley's straightforwardness had been a breath of fresh air. 3 days later, I texted her. "Beer?" She replied within a minute. "Name the place." That was the beginning. We started seeing each other, casually at first. We went hiking on weekends, grabbed dinners at unassuming diners, and spent evenings talking on her porch. It wasn't a rebound. It felt like a slow, deliberate connection. We were both practical people, and there was a mutual understanding that we were navigating tricky waters. But the waters felt undeniably right. Qley was everything Sabrina wasn't: present, content, and sure of herself. I found myself looking forward to her texts, to the sound of her laugh, to the quiet comfort of her presence. We kept it quiet. We didn't want the drama that would inevitably follow if Sabrina or Eleanor found out. But secrets have a way of unraveling. Update 2. It's been 3 months since the canceled wedding. My life has settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work is good, the apartment feels like home, and Qley is the best part of my week. We've become an official couple, though still discreetly. We spend most of our free time together. She's helped me decorate the apartment, replacing the sterile bachelor pad vibe with something warmer. I've started cooking again, experimenting with recipes while she sits at the counter with a glass of wine, critiquing my chopping technique. It's easy, which is a stark contrast to the constant low-level anxiety that permeated my relationship with Sabrina. With Sabrina, I always felt like I had to perform, to match her aesthetic, to be the perfect accessory to her curated life. With Qley, I can just be. Then came the knock on my door. It was a Tuesday evening. Qley was at the clinic, catching up on paperwork, and I was making dinner. I opened the door to find Sabrina standing there. She looked different. The polished, put-together graphic designer was gone. Her hair was messy, she looked tired, and she was wearing an oversized sweater I didn't recognize. "How did you find me?" I asked, keeping the door half closed. "Eleanor gave me the address. She said you sent her a forwarding address for some mail." Sabrina hesitated. "Can I come in?" I didn't want her in my space, but I also didn't want a scene in the hallway. I stepped aside. She walked in, looking around the small apartment. Her eyes landed on a pair of Qley's hiking boots near the door, but she didn't comment. "I made a mistake," she said, turning to face me. The words spilled out quickly, as if she had rehearsed them. I was an idiot. I got scared, and I panicked, and I thought the grass was greener. It's not. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. And And I want you back, she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. The guys out there, they're awful. They don't care. They don't listen. I miss you. I miss us. There is no us anymore, Sabrina. You made sure of that. I was stressed, she cried. The wedding planning, the pressure. I just needed a break. But I love you. We can fix this. You didn't ask for a break. You said you needed to see what else is out there. You explored your options. Now you have to live with the consequences. She stepped closer, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. Please, she whispered. I know you still care about me. I care that you're hurting, but I don't want to be with you, I said firmly. I've moved on. Her face crumpled. Moved on? It's been 3 months. How could you move on so fast? Because when you walked out, I realized I didn't want to spend my life with someone who viewed me as an option, an anchor weighing her down from exploring. Is there someone else? She asked, her voice turning sharp. I hesitated. I didn't know her an explanation, but I also didn't want to lie. Yes, there is. The color drained from her face. Who? One of those girls from your office. Before I could answer, the door opened. I had given Qley a spare key last week. Qley walked in, carrying a bag of groceries. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw Sabrina. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with realization and impending explosion. Sabrina stared at Qley, then at me, then back at Qley. Her eyes widened, processing the scene. Qley with a key, bringing groceries into my apartment. Qley, Sabrina breathed, the betrayal etching itself onto her features. What are you doing here? Qley, to her credit, didn't flinch. She set the groceries on the counter and looked her sister in the eye. I live here now, essentially, Qley said, her voice calm. You and him. Sabrina sputtered, pointing between us. My ex-fiancé? My sister and my ex-fiancé? He's not your fiancé anymore, Sabrina. Qley replied smoothly. You made that very clear. How long? Sabrina demanded, her voice rising to a shriek. How long has this been going on? Were you screwing him before I even canceled the wedding? Eleanor, predictably, lost her mind. She accused me of plotting this from the beginning, of seducing her older daughter to spite her younger one. She demanded Qley break things off with me immediately. Qley, being Qley, told her mother that she was an adult and would date whomever she pleased. It resulted in a massive family blowout. Eleanor threatened to disown Qley. Sabrina refused to attend any family gathering if Qley or I were present. For a few months, it was tense. Qley's father, a quieter man who usually deferred to Eleanor, reached out privately. He invited us to lunch, away from the family drama. We met him at a diner in Beaverton. He looked tired, but he greeted us warmly. I don't agree with how this happened, he told us, stirring his coffee. But I know Sabrina. I know she made a mistake, and I know she's lashing out because she realizes it now. And Qley, I haven't seen you this happy in years. He didn't offer his blessing, exactly, but he offered a truce. He promised to work on Eleanor, to try and bridge the gap. It was a slow process. Qley laughed, a clear, ringing sound that filled the evening air. Good, she said, leaning in to kiss me. Because you're not getting away that easily. We're keeping the guest list small. And this time, there won't be any artisanal letterpress invitations. We're sending an invite.